"Dad, they haven't eaten anything," the little boy whispered, his eyes fixed on a small table in the corner of the restaurant. Those innocent words made the most powerful man in New York's underworld slowly raise his head. Everyone inside quietly followed his gaze, but no one knew what was about to happen next. The man who stood up was no ordinary customer. He was Alessandro Moretti, a mafia boss feared by countless people with nothing more than a single look. For a few brief seconds, the entire restaurant fell into a suffocating silence. Then Alessandro walked toward the poor mother and daughter, making a decision that left everyone who witnessed it utterly speechless. Stay with us until the very end of this story, because what happened next was a chain of events that no one could have predicted, and it would change all of their lives forever. Sophia looked up. She recognized in a single glance that the man standing over her table was not a waiter. The suit was too dark, too well cut. The hands resting near the edge of the vinyl booth were smooth in the way only men who did not lift things had smooth hands. Her fingers tightened around the sweating water glass, not fear. Exactly. Something older. The wariness of a woman who had learned that when strangers approached her table, there was almost always something they wanted from her. He spoke low and even. No performance behind it. "I'm sorry to interrupt. My son noticed you two haven't ordered yet. Our booth has more room than we need. Would you let us share the table?" The phrasing landed carefully. Not charity, not pity dressed up as generosity, just a table. Sophia searched his face for the thing she was afraid of finding. She did not find it. What she found instead was steadier and harder to read. "We're fine," she said. "We're just waiting for the 6:15. I believe you." His voice did not rise. "My son already made the invitation. I'm just delivering it." A small figure stepped half a pace out from behind him, holding a paper placemat up like evidence. The boy could not have been more than 6. A missing front tooth. Blue eyes serious as a courtroom. "I saved you the last red crayon," he said. "Red's the best one." Beside Sophia, Emma went very still on the vinyl seat. She looked up at her mother the way children look when a decision belongs to someone else. Her small hands, folded neatly on the tabletop, did not move. At the counter, the waitress had stopped wiping the same glass. At the next booth, a conversation resumed a beat too late, softer than before. Sophia exhaled slowly. "Sophia, this is Emma. Alessandro. And that's Luca." She held his gaze another moment. "We're not ordering much." Half warning, half decision. She wanted the line drawn where she could see it. "Nobody's ordering for you." He did not move closer, did not press the point. "There's just room if you want it." Emma slid out of the booth before her mother had finished nodding. Small sneakers hit the floor with a soft tap, her hand already outstretched for the red crayon Luca held between them like a small ceremonial gift. He gave it to her carefully, the way he might have handed over something breakable. Sophia rose more slowly. She gathered Emma's coat off the seat, tucked her daughter's small backpack under one arm, and picked up the water glass, the one thing she had been guarding all evening, as if it were the only object still fully under her authority. She did not look at Alessandro as she followed him back across the diner. She looked at the space he was making, the way he stepped aside without turning his shoulders to hurry her, the way he let Luca run ahead to slide down the booth first, and she tried, with every step, to decide whether this was a trap or whether, for once, it was simply a table, a new booth, 4 people where there had been 2, and a Wednesday evening that neither of them yet understood was about to change everything. Sophia slid into the far side of the booth and did not take off her coat. Her purse stayed in her lap, held there with both hands, the way a woman holds something that might need to leave in a hurry. "We're not ordering a full meal," she said. "Just so that's clear." "Understood," Alessandro said. He did not argue the point. He raised a hand, caught the waitress's eye, and asked for an extra kids menu without looking at the price column. He nudged Luca to slide down the vinyl bench, making room without ceremony. There was no speech about who was paying, no mention of the check at all. 4 people, 1 booth, extra space. He was making room. He was not making a gesture. The children resolved the awkwardness before the adults could. Luca pushed the paper placemat across the table toward Emma and set the red crayon on top of it with the careful gravity of a small ritual. Emma took it without hesitation and bent over the table, already drawing a lopsided sun in the corner where the placemat's border curled up. Sophia ordered carefully. 1 kid's burger basket, split, a cup of soup for herself, nothing else. When the food arrived, she cut Emma's half of the burger into 2 smaller halves before she touched her own bowl. An efficient motion, practiced hundreds of times. The kind of skill nobody teaches and every mother eventually needs. Alessandro noticed it the way he noticed things in boardrooms quietly, without comment, filing it somewhere he could not immediately name. They kept the conversation on safe ground. Bus routes. Which line ran late on Wednesdays? Luca's loose front tooth, which he demonstrated by wiggling it with his tongue until Emma laughed so hard she nearly choked on a fry. Whether ranch belonged on French fries, Alessandro said no. Sophia said obviously yes, and for a second it was just two adults disagreeing about something that did not matter, which was its own small kind of relief. Then Emma's red crayon rolled off the edge of the table and clicked against the tile floor. Alessandro bent down to retrieve it. When he came back up, he caught the flinch. Small, fast, gone almost before it registered. Sophia's hand had moved half an inch toward Emma. Protective. Automatic. The reflex of a woman who had learned that a stranger reaching toward her child was not always harmless. He set the crayon down on the table between them, instead of handing it to Emma directly. He did not comment on it. He simply gave her the half-second of space her body had asked for, and then he went back to his fries as if nothing had happened at all. "Sorry," Sophia said, so quietly it almost did not count as sound. "Long day. You don't owe me an explanation." Something in her shoulders came down another degree. Luca fished into the small pocket of his jeans and produced a coin. Dull silver, edges worn soft by time. He held it out for Emma across the table. "This was my nonno's." Emma stared at it the way small children stare at rare and important things. She did not reach for it. She only looked, memorizing it, as if it might disappear if she blinked too long. She went back to her drawing. 4 small figures around a square table, 2 tall and 2 short. Then she took the red crayon and, at the empty space by the edge, drew a 5th plate. "For whoever is hungry," she said. Sophia's eyes drifted to the placemat and stayed there a second too long before she folded it carefully in half, then again into quarters, and tucked it into the inside pocket of her coat. The check arrived on a small brown tray with 2 peppermint candies balanced on top. Alessandro paid for his and Luca's. Sophia paid for hers and Emma's. Nobody negotiated. Nobody offered. It was exactly as it should have been, and the fact that he did not try to bend it around her was, in its own quiet way, the first thing she trusted about him. Outside, the evening had turned wet and gray. Rain came down at the slant that meant it would keep coming for hours. Headlights smeared gold across the parking lot in soft moving stripes, catching in the puddles by the curb. Sophia lifted Emma into a stroller that had already been through more winters than the girl had years. She fastened the straps with the brisk, wordless efficiency of a woman who had done it in the rain 100 times before, tugged the plastic rain cover down over the front, and straightened up. She looked back at Alessandro once. "Thank you, for not making it a whole thing." There wasn't a thing to make. Just dinner. She almost smiled at that. Almost. From inside the plastic cover, Emma called out through the drizzle, her voice muffled and bright at once. "There's a big blue slide at the library reading garden. It's the best slide in the whole world. You have to come see it sometime." Sophia gently redirected the stroller toward the bus stop before the invitation could turn into an address, before the moment could ask more of her than she was ready to give. She did not look back a second time. Alessandro stood watching until the stroller disappeared around the corner. Luca stood beside him without speaking, small hands still clutching the wet paper placemat against his chest, careful not to let the rain smear the drawing of 5 plates. In the car, the turn signal ticked patiently at a red light. Rain slid sideways across the windshield in long moving sheets. Luca sat quiet in a way that was not like him, small legs still, seatbelt fastened, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. "Papa," he said finally, so softly Alessandro almost missed it under the sound of the wipers. "Are we ever going to see them again?" Alessandro did not answer right away. He watched the light change from red to green and back to red again, watched his own hands on the leather wheel, and understood that whatever he said next would not be an answer to his son. It would be a promise he had to decide, right there in the intersection, whether he actually intended to keep. His hands tightened slightly on the wheel. The silence stretched a beat longer than it should have. "I don't know, buddy, but I'd like to." Back at the penthouse, Alessandro stood at the tall window that looked down over the city and did not turn on the lights. Somewhere behind him, his phone buzzed. Marco Bellini calling to report on the port meeting. Alessandro answered on speaker, listened with half his attention, said the words the call required, and hung up unable to remember what he had agreed to. He opened his laptop, typed the name of the diner, the name of the block. Nothing useful came back. He closed the laptop. He did not sleep that night. He kept thinking about the way Sophia had cut Emma's burger in half before touching her own. 3 weeks passed. Then, on another Wednesday afternoon, walking out of piano lessons, Luca stopped cold on the sidewalk. Sophia's kitchen was small enough that she could stand at the stove and reach the refrigerator without taking a step. The calendar tacked beside the fridge did the real work of running her life. Emma's tuition at Oak Ridge Preschool, due dates circled in blue ink, a late notice from the electric company, tucked behind the calendar so Emma could not see it, bus transfer times written in the corners in handwriting so small it looked apologetic, as if her own life had learned to take up as little space as possible. After Emma was asleep, Sophia sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and logged in to her online accounting certification course. The path she was betting on. The road out from behind the register. She read half a page on payroll tax filings, then read the same paragraph 3 times without any of it landing. She closed the laptop and opened the small drawer beside the stove, the one where she kept the things that mattered too much for anywhere else. Emma's vaccination records, a faded photo strip from a booth at a state fair 3 years and 1 lifetime ago, a single dried leaf Emma had insisted on saving from their first walk after Daniel's funeral, and now, folded into careful quarters, the paper placemat. She did not examine why she had kept it. She only knew that she had, across the East River, in a penthouse that occupied the upper corner of a building she did not know existed. The kitchen was spotless in the way of rooms nobody used properly. The counters gleamed. The refrigerator held sparkling water and takeout containers labeled with dates that had not yet passed. A custody calendar on his phone told Alessandro exactly which Wednesdays and every other weekend belonged to him. He managed piano lessons and dental appointments and permission slips without missing a beat. At the long dining table sat one empty chair that never moved. Elena's chair. He had not moved it in 3 years, and he did not intend to. He was good at problems that came with clear shapes. He could take one apart methodically, quietly, and put it back together before anyone had to ask twice. It was how he had built everything he had. He was less practiced at the questions that did not come with shapes at all. The silences at bedtime that used to belong to 2 parents. The way Luca sometimes stared out car windows at nothing. The intercom chimed. Marco Bellini let himself in with the ease of a man who had been letting himself in for 15 years. He carried a small tray with 2 espressos, set it on the desk, and stepped back with the practiced deference of someone who understood exactly where he belonged in the room. Everything's arranged for tomorrow, signore. The council will be there by 9. He paused. Anything else you need tonight, boss? Alessandro shook his head. Marco nodded once and left as quietly as he had come. Alessandro looked at the empty chair. He thought about a small hand holding out a red crayon like a ceremonial gift. 3 weeks after the diner, on another Wednesday afternoon, after piano lessons had let out and the sky over Brooklyn had gone gray at the edges, Luca stopped cold on the sidewalk as if the question had been waiting inside him for exactly this many days. Papa, can we go to the library? The one with the garden? No, we just left school. Emma said there's a big blue slide. She said it's the best one. His face held a stubbornness Alessandro had not seen in months. Not sullen, just certain. I want to see if it's true. Alessandro understood without either of them saying it aloud. This was not about a slide. All right, we'll go look. The library's reading garden sat behind the building, a small, fenced square of grass with a modest playground donated by some long-ago community fund. A plaque bolted to the low retaining wall to prove it, 2 benches. A blue tunnel slide that had faded to something closer to gray, but that no 6-year-old had ever bothered to notice. Luca was out of the car before Alessandro had finished parking. Sneakers hit gravel with a bright, fast crunch, and he scanned the equipment with the focused urgency of a much smaller search party. He found her on the swings. Emma, look, it's me! His voice carried clean across the yard, delighted, entirely without calculation, the way only a 6-year-old's joy could be. On a stone bench beside the fence, Sophia went rigid the instant she registered the voice. Alessandro watched it happen in real time. The straightening of her spine, the quick reflexive zip of Emma's grocery bag by her ankle, her hand already moving toward the canvas tote beside her on the bench, the way a woman moves when she is quietly calculating an exit route she may or may not need. Alessandro stopped several paces short of the bench. He gave her the room to decide. Leaves crunched once under his shoes and then went quiet. He did not call out. He did not apologize for showing up, and he did not pretend it was an accident either. He simply stood there, letting the choice belong entirely to her. Emma was already off the swing, small hands tugging at her mother's sleeve. Please, Mama, can Luca see the slide? Right now, before the sun goes down. Sophia looked at Alessandro, then she looked down at her daughter's face, lit up in a way it rarely was these days. And then, slowly, she set the tote bag back down on the bench. Their first conversation on that stone bench was small on purpose. Sophia asked what he thought of the cold snap coming in. Alessandro said he had not decided yet. She mentioned, without weight behind it, that she was hoping to find something with daytime hours before spring. He nodded. He asked one careful follow-up question and no others. He had learned that much. Emma climbed the tunnel slide 4 times in a row. Luca counted each time she came down, calling out the number like a boxing referee. 3. You're on 3, Emma. On the 4th try, Luca tried to race her up the ramp, tripped on his own sneaker, and pitched forward into the grass. He rolled once and lay perfectly still, tongue sticking out one corner of his mouth, playing dead with the dedication of a boy who had studied the technique. Sophia laughed. Once, full and unguarded, out before she could catch it. Alessandro noticed it the way he had noticed the way she cut Emma's burger. He did not comment. He only noticed. The laugh was different from the laughter he heard at foundation events. It was less careful, less shaped for the room. It sounded like her. Emma pronounced her brother dead with great sadness and demanded that they hold a state funeral immediately, which meant covering him in leaves and singing a song neither of the children knew the words to. When the sun finally started slipping behind the low roofs of Prospect Heights, Sophia gathered her tote and Emma's coat. She did not say when she would be at the garden next. Alessandro did not ask. But both of them, walking to their separate cars in the cooling light, understood exactly what had just happened. Thursday became the day. Nobody proposed it. Nobody wrote it down. It was just that the library sat 2 bus stops from where Sophia caught her transfer after her afternoon shift at the supermarket, and the reading garden gave Emma somewhere to run before the long ride home. It was just that Alessandro rearranged his standing meetings, so that the one thing that could not move sat on his calendar as a single blank hour on Thursday afternoons. Unlabeled, protected from everyone including his own assistant. There was no promise made, no schedule confirmed, just 2 families finding week after week that they kept arriving at the same patch of grass at the same hour. As if a decision had already been made somewhere neither of them could see, Alessandro learned to bring small, useful things, instead of anything that looked like a gift. A brown paper bag of clementines from his own kitchen, split open on the bench without ceremony, a travel pack of wet wipes for sticky hands, a box of sidewalk chalk that had been rattling in his trunk since some forgotten errand, which Luca surrendered to the pavement without being asked twice. Once, a spare umbrella that he simply left leaning against the bench when the sky started to spit rain, and did not mention when Sophia picked it up. She noticed the difference. Nothing arrived wrapped. Nothing came with a look that expected thanks. Nothing came with a name stitched into it. The children built their own economy entirely apart from the adults. Luca always saved the strawberry hard candy for Emma, no matter how many other flavors ended up scattered under the bench, and Emma began carrying a small folded drawing in her pocket every Thursday, ready to present it the moment Luca appeared through the garden gate. One afternoon, warming in the last of the sun, Emma tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed at Sophia's wrist. Mama's red string. Grandma made it. It keeps her safe. Sophia smiled and touched the frayed cord with 2 fingers, the way she always did when it was mentioned. She did not explain it further. She did not need to. Beyond the reading garden and the park, Alessandro began stopping in at the supermarket where Sophia worked her morning shift. He never spoke to her. He never lingered at her register. He bought coffee from the automated machine near the entrance, walked past her line at a distance, and left. He wanted to see her. He did not want to intrude on her. There was a difference, and he was learning it slowly. One Thursday, sun still warm on the swings, Emma pronounced her verdict with the flat authority of a 5-year-old handing down a ruling. Alessandro is a grown-up name. You're Mr. A now. Alessandro laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of him. The first one to go in longer than he wanted to admit. Mr. A it is. Sophia watched him with his son over the following weeks, the way he was careful not to crowd Emma, the way he let the children lead their play instead of orchestrating it, the way he never asked her a question she had not first shown herself ready to answer. That last part, especially, was unusual in men. Slowly, one Thursday at a time, she allowed herself to trust. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Alessandro came to understand the shape of Sophia's week, the way he understood most things by watching, not by asking. He noticed she was tired on Wednesdays in a way she was not tired on Thursdays, that she carried herself heavier on those days, the way people carry themselves after a double. He noticed the soles of her shoes, worn unevenly at the heel, one side deeper than the other, in the pattern of a woman who was on her feet for 8 hours, and then on her feet for 4 more without sitting between them. He noticed, one Thursday when she arrived at the garden 15 minutes later than usual, the faint chemical smell of industrial cleaner clinging to her sleeves, and the small pale patch on her wrist where she had scrubbed something off too quickly. The morning shift at the supermarket, The evening shift cleaning offices in a law firm near Prospect Park. 2 jobs and 1 child and 1 late husband, and a debt she had not made but was somehow expected to carry. She mentioned the debt only once, in passing. She did not name a number and he did not ask for one. But something in the wall between them settled another inch lower after she said the word. One Thursday in the reading garden, Emma and Luca were swinging side by side, kicking their small legs in unrhythmic bursts, when Emma said the thing children say when they do not yet know that some sentences are supposed to be private. Papa is in heaven. Mama says he made mistakes but he loved us. Luca considered this with the seriousness of a boy who had heard something similar in his own house, in different words. He did not answer. He only kept swinging. Alessandro heard it from the bench. He did not turn his head. He did not comment, but he understood now, in one small, clean piece, what he had only been able to guess at before. Later, when the children had drifted off to the sandbox and were absorbed in some small negotiation over a plastic shovel, Sophia spoke without looking at him. Her voice was flat and unhurried, the tone of a woman who had already done all the crying that particular set of facts was going to get from her. Daniel died 3 years ago. Industrial accident. He also left debts I didn't know about. Credit cards in my name I didn't sign for. A loan taken out against a car we didn't own anymore. She watched Emma dig a small hole in the sand. I'm working through it, slowly. But I don't need pity. I just don't want you to think Emma has some perfect memory of her father I'm protecting. I don't think that, Alessandro said. Good. She let out a slow breath. She deserves to know he was human, but she also deserves to know she is loved. Both things can be true. Alessandro sat very still on the bench beside her. He thought about Elena, about the way Luca sometimes looked at the framed photograph on the hallway wall and did not have any private memory of the woman inside it, only the story other people had told him about her. He did not promise Sophia anything. He did not offer to look into the debts, or to make a call, or to ease the shape of what she was carrying. He did not lay out a plan. He only sat beside her on the stone bench until the sun went down, and today, that was enough. Weeks slipped past. Early winter came to Brooklyn, thin and gray, and the trees in the reading garden let go of their last leaves in a single windy afternoon. Sophia dug a heavier coat out of a bag at the back of her closet and put Emma in it. It was still 2 sizes too big at the shoulders, sleeves rolled twice at the wrist, but it was warm, and Emma called it her big girl coat, with the seriousness of a small mayor at a ribbon cutting. On a Saturday evening in the first real cold of the season, Alessandro invited Sophia and Emma to the penthouse for dinner. Not a restaurant, not a foundation event, not a car sent to fetch them, just cooking. Sophia hesitated over the phone, then agreed, because Emma had already been asking about Luca's kitchen all week, because Alessandro said, low and dry, pizza, homemade. Luca is convinced I can't handle dough. She brought a cheap bottle of red wine tucked into her tote, not for etiquette, just because she did not want to arrive empty-handed, and she would not let herself arrive with less than something. In the penthouse kitchen, the children helped roll out the dough with the enthusiasm of small vandals. Flour got everywhere. On the counter, on the floor, in Luca's hair. Alessandro wore an apron he had clearly never worn before, his sleeves pushed up to the elbows, his hands white to the wrists, and he handled the dough with the exact clumsy sincerity of a man who had learned to cook late in life from videos. Emma, standing on a stool beside him, reached up with one small floured hand and pressed a perfect white handprint onto Sophia's cheek. Sophia laughed, startled, real. Her hand went up to her own face too late to catch it, and then she was laughing harder because Luca and Emma were laughing, and Alessandro was watching her with an expression she could not entirely read. Dinner was set at the long dining table where the empty chair had lived for 3 years, Elena's chair. Alessandro did not move it, but this time, Sophia sat beside him at the head, and the 2 children sat across, and Elena's chair stayed where it had always been. The table did not feel missing anyone. After the children had drifted off to the leather sofa to watch a cartoon and fallen asleep tangled together under a blanket within 20 minutes, Alessandro and Sophia stood at the tall window that looked down over the city. Manhattan glittered below them, cold and beautiful and far away. This is dangerous, Sophia said. What is this? Feeling this? She did not look at him. She looked at the city. I've been alone a long time, Alessandro. I don't know how to want anything anymore without expecting to pay for it. He did not answer with words. He only laid his hand over hers where it rested on the window ledge. She did not pull away. For the first time in more years than he could account for, Alessandro felt the thing he had forgotten existed. Not the peace he had bought, not the peace security teams provided, A quieter kind, the peace of an ordinary family, sleeping on a couch across the room, breathing gently in the low blue light of a television nobody was watching. The peace had been there all along, waiting for anyone brave enough to sit down inside it. He looked at Sophia, and he thought, with the certainty of a man who had never lost anything twice, I want to give her everything. That was the thought that started the trouble. The next morning, Alessandro sat at the wide desk in his penthouse study while a gold winter light moved slow and clean across the New York skyline. He had slept 4 hours. He did not need more. He kept thinking about Sophia at the window, the way she had said, without drama, without asking anything, I don't know how to want anything anymore without expecting to pay for it. He kept thinking about the soles of her shoes worn unevenly at the heel, about the 2 jobs, about the debt a dead man had left in her name and then walked away from into the ground. He did not think about asking her. He thought about solving it. Give him a problem with a clear shape, and he could take it apart methodically, efficiently, without noise. It was how he had built everything he had. It was how he had held a family together through the worst 3 years of his life. It was how a man like him proved love by making the sharp edges of a woman's life dull enough that she would not cut herself on them again. He picked up the phone. He called the financial attorney who handled the quietest of his accounts. He asked for a full trace on the debts left behind by Daniel Carter. Every card, every creditor, every account with Sophia's name attached that she had not, in her own hand, signed for. He wanted the file on his desk by end of day. He called Marco Bellini. Marco, I need Oak Ridge preschool tuition for Emma Carter paid through the end of the school year. Foundation account. No name attached to the wire. Label it a general hardship disbursement. Marco did not ask why. He never did. Consider it done, boss. He called a contact at an accounting clinic near Prospect Park that had been quietly opening a billing position for 2 months. He kept the ask small. He kept the ask deniable. There's a woman finishing her certification, Sophia Carter. When the position opens, contact her. Full standard process, standard interview. Just make sure she doesn't know I recommended her. Within 3 days, everything was arranged with the quiet efficiency of a man who had spent 20 years arranging things quietly. The Carter debt, $18,000, spread across 4 creditors, was wiped clean through 3 different accounts routed through the foundation. The creditors received checks, no names attached. No return address, only silence and a paid-in-full stamp. Emma's tuition at Oak Ridge was settled through the end of the academic year with a single wire, marked as an anonymous scholarship grant. Sophia received a letter from an accounting clinic she had never heard of, inviting her to interview for a billing position with daytime hours and full benefits. She read the letter twice. She did not know that Alessandro had ever made the call. He felt good about it. He thought it was clean. He thought he had honored her dignity precisely by not naming himself in any of it. Anonymous, invisible, the kind of help a woman like her, proud and careful, would never be forced to thank him for. He did not consider, not once, that fixing something quietly and fixing something invisibly were not the same thing. In a separate office across the river, Marco Bellini held a copy of the wire transfer paperwork under a desk lamp and studied the amount and the recipient name for a long, unhurried moment. Then he smiled a small, private smile, the kind that never made it to his eyes. So the boss has a soft spot. He folded the paperwork in half, slipped it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, and thought, with the patience of a man who had waited 15 years for exactly this kind of leverage, that this would be useful one day. Tuesday, 4 days after the pizza night. Sophia arrived at Oak Ridge just before pickup, still in her supermarket vest, still smelling faintly of the produce aisle. The receptionist at the front desk brightened when she saw her, a woman named Karen, warm and well-meaning, always ready with a small compliment about Emma's drawings. Miss Carter, so good to see you. Karen leaned across the counter, her voice soft with an admiration she clearly thought was welcome. We just wanted to say thank you again. Mr. Moretti's gift really came through at the right time for you two. Sophia went still. I'm sorry, what? The tuition. Through the end of the year. Such a kind gesture. We were all so touched. Karen paused, her smile faltering a little. You knew, didn't you? 2 other mothers stood near the sign-out clipboard, half listening in the way pickup lines always half listen. Sophia watched their expressions shift in real time, the quick, curious glance, the small recalibration of a story they thought they already understood about her, the soft repositioning of Sophia Carter from a woman working hard into a woman being carried. She smiled at Karen, said something warm and blank, and walked Emma to the car with steady hands. She did not let herself feel any of it until the car door closed. She sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, Emma said something bright about a paper snowflake she had made in art class. Sophia nodded in the right places without hearing a single word. At home, she settled Emma with a snack and a cartoon, and opened her laptop at the kitchen table. The email from the clinic was still in her inbox, unopened for 4 days because she had wanted to feel proud of it before she opened it. She read it now. Then she Googled the clinic. Then she pulled up the number and called. "Hello. I received an invitation to interview for a billing position. I just want to confirm, how did you get my name?" The woman on the other end hesitated. That was the whole answer, right there, in the hesitation. A personal recommendation from one of our board members, Mr. Moretti." Sophia set the phone down on the kitchen table very carefully, the way a person sets down something fragile. She went through her old mail next. 3 envelopes she had not opened yet because the return addresses had told her they were not urgent. Notices of payment received, from 2 of Daniel's creditors. Debts she had not paid. Debts she had not been planning to touch until next year at the earliest. Everything clicked into place at once. She called Alessandro that night from the kitchen table. Her voice came out flat and controlled in a way that was worse than shouting. "You paid my daughter's tuition. You paid off Daniel's debts. You arranged the interview at the clinic. I was trying to help." His voice was quiet at the other end. "You were carrying so much you didn't ask me. I didn't want to put you in the position of having to ask. That wasn't your call to make." Her voice held steady, but just barely. "You paid the bills, Alessandro, but you didn't ask what it would cost me. Sophia, I have people at the pickup line now, looking at me different. Like I'm the story you tell at your foundation dinners. Like I'm not the one who kept Emma alive on my own for 3 years before you ever showed up. You are, I know what you meant. She was not cruel about it. That was somehow worse. I don't think you're a bad man, Alessandro. I think you're used to fixing things without anyone getting to say no. And I can't be one of the things you fix." She hung up. "I don't want to be a problem someone else fixes." Later that night, Luca appeared in the doorway of Alessandro's study in his stocking feet. Alessandro had not heard him come down the long hallway. Luca had learned somewhere in the last year to move through the penthouse the way small, quiet animals move, without weight, without announcement, as if he had already understood that his father spent most nights alone with something heavy on the desk. "Papa," the voice was small. There was no hiding from it. "Did you make Miss Sophia sad?" Alessandro sat very still. Somewhere in his fingers, the pen he had been holding slipped free and hit the leather blotter with a small, hollow tap. It was the loudest sound in the room for a long moment. He thought about lying, about making it complicated in the way adults make things complicated when they mean, "I do not want to answer this honestly." He thought about telling his son that grown-ups sometimes disagreed, that everything was fine, that she would come back to the garden on Thursday. He did not. "Yeah, buddy, I think maybe I did." Luca stepped into the study. His footed pajamas whispered against the rug. "Why?" Alessandro paused. The question was so plain he could not find a plain answer for it. "Because I've spent so many years making decisions for other people. Big decisions, small decisions. I forgot how to let someone make their own." Luca considered this with the seriousness of a 6-year-old whose whole world was still built out of fairness. His small brow drew in. "But Miss Sophia is smart. She can make her own." "Yes, she can. Then why didn't you let her?" Alessandro had no answer for that. None honest enough to say aloud to his own son. Luca stood there a moment longer, watching him with an expression Alessandro could not fully read, then turned and padded back down the hallway toward bed. He did not look back. Alessandro sat alone in the study for a very long time. In the morning, he did not call Sophia. He did not send flowers. He did not write a long apologetic message explaining his intentions. He made 2 quiet phone calls instead. He called Oak Ridge Preschool and asked them to move Emma's tuition payment out of any account tied to her name into the school's general hardship fund. "If there's any excess," he said, "apply it to the general fund. No names." He called his contact at the accounting clinic and asked her, plainly, to withdraw the recommendation. If Sophia Carter interviews, she gets there on her own merit. No hand on the scale. I'm asking as a personal favor. She doesn't hear my name. Not from you. Not from anyone on your board. He could not recover the money that had already reached Daniel Carter's creditors. That was gone. But he sat down at the desk that afternoon and wrote Sophia a letter by hand. Not an email, not a text. A letter on plain paper, sealed in a plain envelope, addressed in his own writing. He explained exactly what he had done, why he had done it, and that she owed him nothing. Not a phone call, not a thank you, not a second thought. There were no soft apologies engineered to earn her back, only the truth, laid down straight. He mailed the letter, then he waited. not passively. Thursday came. Alessandro did not go to the reading garden. He took Luca to a different park across the borough, so Sophia would not walk into the garden and find him waiting there, filling space that was hers to decide about. Luca did not ask why. But that evening, he sat at the kitchen counter with a piece of construction paper and a red crayon, drawing 4 small stick figures around a square table. Emma held a green crayon in the drawing. Beneath it, in the careful, uneven letters of a 6-year-old learning cursive, he wrote, "Emma, I'm still saving your seat." He asked Angelo to deliver it. 3 weeks passed. Sophia had read the letter. She had not answered. She had not called. She had not thanked him or thrown the envelope out either. She had folded it once along its original crease and slid it into the drawer beside the stove, next to the folded paper placemat and the vaccination records, in the place she kept the things she could not yet explain to herself. Emma asked about Luca every week, sometimes twice. "We're taking a break, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need to think." Emma accepted this the way children accept most things adults say when they are not ready to explain. She kept the folded stick figure drawing Angelo had delivered on her nightstand. She did not ask about it out loud. She only looked at it before bed sometimes, tracing the 4 small figures with one finger. On a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 hour before Sophia's in-person accounting certification exam at Columbus State, the final assessment she had waited months for her regular sitter canceled by text. A stomach bug, a single crying face emoji, a sorry. The exam could not be rescheduled without dropping Sophia's entire timeline back a full semester. She called 3 backup numbers. Nobody answered. Standing in her kitchen with her exam materials laid out on the counter and 11 minutes to solve an impossible math problem, she ran through every name in her phone twice, before she let herself consider the one number she had been avoiding for 3 weeks. She called Alessandro. "I need someone to watch Emma for the next 90 minutes, she said before he could say hello. Her voice came out clipped and businesslike, holding the line she needed to hold. "I have an exam I can't reschedule. I'll pay your hourly rate." "This is not a favor." "Understood," Alessandro said. He was already reaching for his keys. "I'm on my way." He arrived 12 minutes later with Luca in tow. Sophia met him at the door with a handwritten list already taped to the front of the refrigerator. Snack times, the rescue inhaler in the second drawer, Emma's rule about which stuffed rabbit went where during quiet time, the channel for the good cartoon. Alessandro read the list once, said nothing about how thorough it was, and nodded. 90 minutes, Sophia said again, keys already in her hand. "I mean it. Go. We've got it." He followed the list exactly. When Emma got upset partway through, her stomach knotted from nerves about her mother being gone, Alessandro cleaned her up without fuss, without commentary the way anyone competent handles an ordinary mess. He brought her ginger ale in a small cup. He did not call it anything. When Luca grew anxious watching the clock, worried they were somehow going to mess this up, Alessandro sat with him at the kitchen table and gave him the job of announcing when 10 minutes had passed, then 20, then 30. Real time, real numbers. Not the pretend soothing kind adults offered when they thought children could not handle waiting. There was a hinge on the pantry cabinet that had been catching Sophia's sleeve for 2 years. Alessandro fixed it carefully, from the doorway, with Luca holding the flashlight and Emma asleep within sight on the couch. He understood now that usefulness did not grant him ownership of anything at all. Sophia came back an hour and 26 minutes later. She found the kitchen clean. Emma asleep on the couch under a blanket that had not been there before. Luca quietly finishing a math worksheet at the table. The hinge finally silent. Alessandro was waiting on the porch step. Not inside. "I read your letter," Sophia said. It was the first thing she had said to him in 3 weeks. He nodded, did not speak. She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "I made too much soup for dinner. If you two haven't eaten yet, there's enough at the table." Alessandro paused a long beat on the wooden step. Then he turned around. Weeks slipped past. The bowl of soup on Wednesday nights became the bowl of soup on Wednesday and Saturday nights, and then simply the shape of a shared kitchen at the end of long days. Sophia passed her certification. She interviewed for a billing position at a small clinic in Prospect Heights she had found on her own, on a job board, and got it on the strength of a real interview and a real test. Alessandro had made no calls. She had checked. That mattered to her more than the salary did. Alessandro and Sophia began, slowly, carefully, to date. Emma and Luca, by then, were something closer to siblings than to friends. They fought over crayons. They shared candy. Emma called the penthouse Luca's house. Luca called the small Brooklyn apartment Emma's house. Neither of them noticed the geography anymore. Alessandro opened the door of his life to Sophia in careful inches. He did not lie. He also did not tell her everything. She knew he had business, and she did not press him on it. She had decided, quietly, that she would let him bring her into the rest of it when he was ready. They both knew that day was coming. Neither of them named it out loud. On a Tuesday evening, Sophia left the clinic later than usual. A complicated insurance case had held her at her desk past 7. She cut down a small side street to reach the subway faster, coat pulled tight against a cold wind coming in off the water. She passed a small Italian cafe that had already closed for the night. The door was locked, but the side window, propped open a few inches for air, sat just above head height. She recognized the man inside. Marco Bellini was sitting at a back table with 3 men she did not know. In the middle of the table sat a bottle of grappa, 4 squat glasses, and a folded paper that looked like a map. She froze on the sidewalk a few paces from the window. A voice came through the open sliver of glass. Marco's voice. Low, unhurried, the voice of a man who had already made a decision. Once Moretti signs over the East Side territory, we split it 4 ways. He won't see it coming. Not from me. He trusts me like a brother. Another man laughed. It was a cold sound, without any real amusement in it. And the woman? If she becomes a problem, she won't. Nobody's looking for a Brooklyn accountant. Sophia's heart began beating in her ears. She took one careful step back, then another. Her hand shook as she pulled her phone out of her coat pocket. She dialed Alessandro. The line rang again. Voicemail. Alessandro, it's me. It's Marco. He's meeting with A. Hand closed over the phone. Firm, not hurried. She turned. Marco stood behind her on the sidewalk. He had seen her in the reflection of the window. He was not smiling. He looked almost sorry. Signora, he said gently, you should have kept walking. 2 of the men from inside stepped out onto the sidewalk behind him. They did not grab her. They did not need to. They were polite enough that any passerby glancing across the street would not have thought anything at all. They walked her calmly around the corner and into the back of a black SUV parked in the alley. Marco kept her phone. He deleted the voicemail. He cleared her call history. He did it without hurry. Then he took out his own phone and called Alessandro. Alessandro was on the top floor of the penthouse tower with 3 of his underbosses when the phone rang. The number was not one he recognized. He did not usually answer numbers he did not recognize. But something small at the base of his neck lifted, and he picked up. Boss. Marco. What's I have Sophia? Alessandro stood up. The room went silent behind him. The 3 men at the long table went still. In that particular way, men in his world went still, when they understood, without being told, that the shape of the night had just changed. What did you say? I have her. She saw something she shouldn't have. We need to talk. In person. Alessandro did not speak for several seconds. When his voice came back, it was flat and even in a way that would have frightened anyone in that room if they had heard it aimed at them. You've made a mistake, Marco. We'll see, boss. Marco's voice was calm, almost polite. The voice of a man who had rehearsed this call in his head for a long time. 18 hours. I'll send you the location. Come alone. If I see anyone else, if I even smell a wire, she's gone before you're through the door. What do you want? East Side territory. Everything. Signed over to me in front of the council. And your resignation from the family? You disappear. You retire. You keep your money. Keep your foundation. But the name stays with me. And Sophia? Walks free the moment ink hits paper. I don't believe you. You don't have to. You have 18 hours. A short breath. 15 now. The line went dead. Alessandro stood at the tall window of the penthouse, looking down at the lights of the city he had built a life inside of, and felt the floor of that life go silent beneath him. He did not move for a long moment. He did not look at the 3 men still seated at the table behind him. He did not need to. He turned. He looked at each of them in turn. He read their faces the way he had learned to read faces over 20 years. Small tells, the angle of a jaw, the way a man's hand did or did not go to the phone in his pocket. Any one of them could be feeding Marco. Any one of them could have known this was coming. He could not trust any of them, except a few. He excused the 3 underbosses, politely, ordinary business, ordinary tomorrow. He watched them file out, then he walked to his private office and closed the heavy door behind him. He made 4 calls. He called Angelo Ricci, the driver who had been behind his wheel for 12 years, who had driven Elena to the hospital the night she died, and had never once repeated a word he had heard in the back seat since. Come to the penthouse. Now. Don't tell anyone. He called Bruno Salvato, the man who had carried a newborn Luca out of the hospital in a car seat because Alessandro's hands had not been steady enough to do it himself. Bruno, I need you. Tonight. He called Vincenzo Torres a wiry, quiet man who had knelt on the floor of this same penthouse 3 years ago and taught a barely 4-year-old Luca how to tie his shoes. He called Dr. Enrico Falcone the family physician, 63 years old, who would come because there was no version of the world in which he would not. 4 men, to whom he would entrust his life. 4 men Marco had not bought, because Marco, in the end, did not understand why anyone would ever be loyal to anything more than money. Angelo Ricci arrived at the penthouse in 20 minutes. Alessandro explained in the fewest words the night could hold. Take Luca to the safe house in Poughkeepsie tonight. If I don't call within 6 hours of the meet, get Emma too. Sophia gave me the passcode to the locked cabinet where she keeps her records. Emma stays with Sophia's sisters in Queens. They'll understand. Sophia trusts them. Angelo did not ask why. He only nodded once, slowly, in the way of a man whose loyalty had never once required explaining. Alessandro gathered Bruno Salvato, Vincenzo Torres, and 4 others in a private room at the back of a shuttered restaurant he owned in downtown Brooklyn. He had chosen them not for rank, not for years of service. He had chosen them for what he had seen in their eyes when Luca had called them uncle, the softening, the small, careful nod, the way a hard man became briefly and helplessly a man who could not bear the thought of a child being disappointed. He spoke short. Marco has Sophia. He wants the East Side and my name. This ends tonight. But nobody outside this room knows. If it leaks, if a phone rings in the wrong place, if a word reaches the wrong ear, she dies before we arrive. Nobody asked a question. Nobody hesitated. Bruno spoke first. We follow you in without being seen? Yes. He'll expect me alone. He'll have men at the entrance, on the roof, at the exits. We need to identify the location first, scout every angle, and be in position before I walk in through the front. Enrico Falcone, still in his overcoat, still holding his medical bag from the drive over. Medical support? Yes. Set up outside. Full trauma gear. If she's hurt when I get there, I want you ready to move on her the instant we bring her out. Vincenzo, quiet as always. Weapons? Full, but no shooting until we have her clear. Marco is smart. He'll have a man on her at all times. The phone in Alessandro's pocket buzzed. He looked at it once. An address. A photograph of a rusted metal door. An abandoned warehouse in Red Hook. It had once been a cold storage facility for imported seafood. The salt had eaten through the exterior years ago. Alessandro knew the building. He had bought and quietly written off that warehouse 5 years earlier, kept it as one of a dozen paper assets under a shell company he no longer used, which meant Marco had walked those floors more than once. Marco knew the layout. Marco knew where the sightlines died and where the concrete stopped sound. Alessandro's face did not change, but something behind his eyes did. Before he left the penthouse, he called Luca into the study. The boy came in his stocking feet again, the way he always did. Alessandro knelt down, so that they were the same height. He took the old silver coin from his desk, the one his grandfather had put into his father's palm, and his father had put into his, and pressed it into Luca's hand. If I'm not home in the morning, this belongs to you. And to Emma. Give it to Miss Sophia. Tell her Papa tried to have enough time. Luca did not ask what he meant. He only hugged him a small 6-year-old hug, held longer than any hug that boy had ever given him. Papa, please come home. Alessandro did not promise. He had learned that too. Outside, it had begun to rain. It came down at the same slant it had come down that first Wednesday evening months ago, when he had crossed a small diner to a booth by the window and asked a tired woman if they might share a table. Angelo drove Luca away into the wet dark. Alessandro watched the taillights disappear. Then he turned, picked up his coat, and started for Red Hook. Late night. Red Hook. The rain had softened into a fine mist that clung to the salt-eaten walls of the warehouse and dulled the sound of anything approaching from a distance. Bruno, Vincenzo, and the 4 others had been in position 4 hours before Alessandro arrived. They had counted men, mapped every sightline, noted where the industrial lights blinked out and where the concrete swallowed footsteps. 6 of Marco's men. 1 on the front door, 1 at the side entrance, 2 on the upper catwalk that ran along the interior 2nd floor, 2 more on the roof, positioned where they thought no one could see them from below. Bruno lay flat on the roof of the empty building across the alley, a rifle steady against his shoulder, breathing the way a man breathes when he has done this before and hopes never to do it again. Vincenzo crouched behind a rusted dumpster near the side door. 2 of the loyal men had taken the rear service exit and were pressed against the brick, waiting. Enrico Falcone sat in an unmarked ambulance parked 2 blocks away, a full trauma kit already unfolded on the gurney beside him. IV line prepared, chest seal ready. Alessandro arrived alone in a black sedan. He stepped out into the mist without an umbrella, coat unbuttoned, hands visible, no weapon in sight. Inside the warehouse, the industrial lights hung on long cables from the ceiling, some flickering, one shattered, casting the concrete floor in patches of hard yellow and deep shadow. In the middle of the open floor, Sophia sat tied to a metal chair. Her wrists were red from the rope, her hair had come loose. There was no bruise on her face, no cut on her lip. The red string was still around her wrist. Marco stood 2 meters from her, a pistol held loose at his side. He smiled when Alessandro walked through the front door. It was a soft, almost affectionate smile, the smile of a man who believed he had already won. Outside, on the roof, Bruno pressed the small button on his earpiece. In position, awaiting signal, the heavy door swung closed behind Alessandro with a low industrial thud. Marco, boss. Marco spread his hands, gun still held loose. Alone, as agreed. Good. Alessandro let his eyes travel to Sophia. She was awake. She was not hurt. Marco had been smart enough to keep her intact until the trade was complete. Why, Marco? Alessandro's voice was level, but weighted. I gave you money, position. My son calls you uncle. I never once treated you badly. Marco laughed. It was cold and dry. With my ability, I deserve more than that. I'm entirely capable of replacing you. I don't want to spend my whole life living under the shadow of Alessandro Moretti. You could have left. You could have started your own thing. You didn't have to take her. Left with what? Your permission? Your leftovers? Marco shook his head, almost gently. No, boss. This way, I take what I built with you, and nobody remembers Moretti. Alessandro did not answer. He only nodded, slow and small, a gesture Marco could not have read. On the roof, Bruno pressed the button. In the same second, Vincenzo kicked the side door in. The 2 men at the rear surged through the service entrance. Bruno's rifle cracked twice from the neighboring roof, and both figures on the interior catwalk went down before they understood what was happening. The warehouse exploded into gunfire. Industrial lights burst overhead, sparks falling like meteor rain. Alessandro moved for Sophia. He had a knife in his sleeve. Marco had never taught her that his men always carried at least 3 weapons. Alessandro reached her in 3 strides. The blade slid free of his sleeve, and he began sawing through the rope at her wrists, working fast, keeping his body between her and the open floor. He had cut through the first coil and was starting on the second, when one of Marco's remaining men rose from behind a stack of pallets to his left, pistol raised. Alessandro did not see him. Sophia did. She yanked her half-freed wrist through the loose end of the rope with a wrench of raw strength and threw herself sideways, into the line between them. The bullet caught her high in the chest. Not the heart, but close enough that time did strange things for a moment. She folded slowly, and Alessandro caught her, and the red string on her wrist went dark, thread and blood no longer distinguishable from each other. From the roof across the alley, Bruno's rifle cracked once. The man behind the pallets dropped without a sound. You, Sophia whispered, her voice thin and broken. You idiot. I love you, you idiot. Alessandro held her, one hand pressed hard against the wound, the other cradling the back of her head. Blood ran between his fingers. He could not feel his own face. Around them, the firefight continued. Vincenzo took down 2 of Marco's remaining men at the front door with efficient, single-shot precision. Bruno's rifle spoke once more from the roof, and a gunman on the far catwalk crumpled against a rusted railing. Alessandro looked down at Sophia in his arms, the blood at the corner of her mouth, the shallow, uneven rise of her chest, and something inside him broke completely. In the quiet, final way things break when a man has finally been shown what he cannot afford to lose. Enrico Falcone was already at his side. Kit unfurled on the cold concrete beside him. Gauze, chest seal, ivy needle sliding cleanly into the crook of her arm. His hands moved with the practiced calm of a man who had run this exact drill on kitchen tables and back alley floors for 40 years. Get her to the ambulance, Enrico said. Now. Vincenzo and one of the loyal men lifted her onto the folding stretcher and moved fast for the side door, boots wet with rain and something darker. Alessandro stood up. Sophia's blood was on his shirt, on his hands, on the side of his face, where she had touched him last. Marco was running for the side entrance. Alessandro reached the doorway, a step ahead of him, and blocked it. Marco raised the pistol. Alessandro was faster. He did not have a gun. He had the knife. He did not need both. From the roof, Bruno's rifle cracked one final time. The pistol spun out of Marco's hand across the concrete. Marco cried out and clutched his wrist, staggering back, the fight visibly leaving him. Alessandro walked toward him, He did not hurry. You took her. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. You put a bullet in her because I wasn't fast enough. Marco stumbled backward against a stack of empty crates. Boss, we can talk. No, we can't. Alessandro did not give Marco a final chance. No final words. Only one decisive movement in the shadowed corner of the warehouse. It was over in a breath. Marco Bellini died 7 minutes after the counterattack had begun. 3 other traitors died in the exchange. 5 were bound and left kneeling against the rear wall. Bruno would hand them to the police at dawn with a full dossier of Marco's operations sealed and delivered by an anonymous courier. 2 of Alessandro's loyal men had taken minor wounds. No one on his side had died. He ran for the ambulance. Sophia was stable, briefly. She needed surgery immediately. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside the warehouse, the last industrial light exploded softly in a shower of tiny sparks, and the building went dark. The private hospital where Enrico Falcone kept paperwork discreet was tucked into a quiet corner of Upper Manhattan. 2 floors, fewer than 30 beds. The kind of place a man like Alessandro Moretti had helped fund years ago for exactly this reason. Sophia was rushed into surgery within 11 minutes of the ambulance arriving. The operation lasted 4 hours. The bullet had passed close to her right lung, missed the heart by a small, merciful measurement, and grazed no major artery. 2 centimeters in almost any direction, and the story ended in the warehouse. 2 centimeters had bought her a chance. Alessandro sat in the corridor outside the surgical suite. He did not move. He did not check his phone. His shirt was still dark with Sophia's blood. Bruno arrived at some point with a clean shirt folded neatly across his arm and set it on the chair beside him. Alessandro looked at it once. He did not change. When the surgeon finally came out into the corridor, still masked at the neck, and said the words, "She'll live," Alessandro did not cry. He only sat down slowly, put both hands over his face, and took his first real breath in 4 hours. Sophia did not wake for 48 hours. Alessandro stayed at the bedside for 3 days without changing his clothes. He ate almost nothing. Bruno brought coffee. Enrico brought food. Nobody asked him to go home. Nobody had the courage. On the second day, Angelo brought Luca and Emma. He waited in the hallway with the quiet, unmoving patience of a man on watch, hands folded in front of him, eyes on both ends of the corridor at once. Emma climbed onto the plastic chair beside her mother's bed and took Sophia's fingers in her small hand. She did not cry. She understood the way children understand that her mother was sleeping so her body could get better, and that sleeping like this was work, and quiet was how you helped. Luca stood on the other side of the bed. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the old silver coin. He placed it gently in the center of Sophia's open palm and folded her fingers around it. "Papa said this belongs to you now, Miss Sophia." For 3 nights, Alessandro did not sleep. He sat in the low light of the ICU and turned his life over in his hands like a stone he was seeing for the first time. The empire, the territory, the reputation that had made grown men lower their eyes when he entered a room. None of it had saved Sophia. None of it had kept Marco loyal. None of it had given Luca a mother when Elena died in a hospital not unlike this one 3 years ago. Power and money had never once brought him happiness. Only betrayal, only loss, only the widening quiet distance between him and his son. On the 4th day, Sophia opened her eyes. She looked at him for a long moment before she found her voice. When she did, it came out thin and dry. "You look terrible," he laughed. "The first laugh in 4 days. You scared me." "Good, now we're even." She paused, breathing carefully around the tube in her nose. "I meant what I said. In the warehouse. About loving you. Just so you know it wasn't the morphine." Alessandro took her hand. His fingers found the new red string tied around her wrist. Her mother had come to the hospital and replaced the old one while Sophia lay unconscious, without ever telling anyone she had done it. "I know," he said. "I've known for a long time." Sophia stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. Alessandro was there every single day. The morning she was discharged, he was waiting for her in the small garden behind the building. The small garden behind the hospital was still gray with the last of the winter, but a few early crocuses had pushed up through the mulch near the low stone wall. Luca and Emma sat side by side on a wooden bench near the walkway, both of them scrubbed and combed by Angelo that morning. Both of them told the same careful sentence. "Papa has something important to ask." Sophia walked out slowly, one hand still bandaged, the other resting on the low iron rail. She stopped every few paces to breathe. She did not complain. She only smiled when she saw the 2 children waiting. And then she saw Alessandro standing a few feet ahead of them on the garden path. He knelt down in front of her on the damp cobblestones. There was no diamond ring. He held, instead, the old silver coin. "This is the only thing I own that I trust isn't dirty. It's been in my family for 4 generations. My nonno gave it to my father. My father gave it to me. I gave it to Luca to hold." He paused, breath catching in a way it never had in a boardroom, in a courtroom, or in the middle of a warehouse gunfight. "And now, if you'll have me, I want it to be yours." Sophia laughed through the tears rising in her eyes. She closed her bandaged fingers around the coin. Yes. Luca and Emma ran to them across the garden path. All 4 of them held onto each other in the pale sunlight of the last winter afternoon. A few months later, they were married in a small Italian church in Brooklyn. Emma walked ahead in a red dress with a satin sash. Luca carried the ring box in both hands with the seriousness of a boy carrying a live bird. Bruno stood beside Alessandro as his witness. Enrico signed as their witness of record. There were no reporters, no cameras, no display. Only family and the men who had proved their loyalty on a rainy night in Red Hook. After the wedding, Alessandro quietly dissolved the organization. He transferred every legitimate operation, the foundation, the property holdings, the restaurants to Bruno and Vincenzo. Every other operation, he closed. Not sold, not passed on, closed. He left no inheritance for anyone to fight over. In 6 months, the Moretti name had vanished from the New York underworld as if it had never been there at all. 6 months after the wedding, the family moved to a small town in northern New Jersey. A new surname, a new address. Moretti still, but only between them. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, a backyard just big enough for 2 children to run in circles. The dining table Alessandro brought with them had a leaf he had installed himself, and it now sat comfortably as a table for 4. Sophia worked remotely for the clinic in Brooklyn, logging billing files from a laptop at the kitchen counter each morning while the coffee brewed. Alessandro spent time with Luca in the way he had never had time for before: baseball in the yard after school, clumsy pancakes on Saturday mornings, chapter books read aloud before bed with his voice going soft over the pages. 3 months after the wedding, Emma called Alessandro Papa for the first time. Nobody corrected her. Nobody even breathed the wrong way. She said it again the next morning, and the morning after that, until it was simply the word for the man who buttered her toast. For the first time in more years than he had counted, Alessandro woke each morning without listening for the sound of a phone, without checking a window before opening a curtain, without waiting for the news of a betrayal, a shipment, a war. Only then did he understand how simple happiness and peace really were. They had never lived in the power he had built or the money he had accumulated. They lived in the shared meals, the laughter of the children, and the woman he loved sitting close enough to touch. One Sunday afternoon, the family drove back to the small roadside diner where everything had begun. The owner recognized them the moment they walked through the door. He waved them toward the familiar corner booth without a word. The same booth by the window, the same laminated menus, the same chipped mug of crayons at the counter. Sophia ordered a bowl of soup, because that had been the first thing she had ever ordered here, back when a bowl of soup and a glass of water were what a woman could allow herself when she had to choose between eating and paying the electric bill. Emma ordered a chocolate milkshake without hesitating. She had learned, somewhere in the last year, that she was allowed to want things now. Alessandro looked around the small table. 4 seats, 4 people, his son, his stepdaughter, the woman he had almost lost in a warehouse in Red Hook. Snow drifted down soft outside the window, and the diner hummed with the ordinary music of forks against plates and low weekend laughter. He knew, finally, that he had found the thing he had spent his whole life searching for without knowing its name. And so, dear friends, the story of Alessandro and Sophia comes gently to its close. This story is a work of fiction, created for storytelling and reflection, but the feeling behind it is real. Alessandro spent most of his life believing that power and money could buy anything a man might want. He learned, in the hardest possible way, that real kindness does not take control. It asks first, it listens, and when it makes room for someone at the table, it leaves that person's dignity sitting right there beside them. Perhaps the quiet lesson here is this: true happiness does not live in what we can buy. It lives in what we are willing to share, in the seat we offer without conditions, in the plate we set out just in case someone is hungry, in the small daily choice to see another human being fully, without trying to fix them, without trying to own the outcome. If this story touched something in you, we would love to hear from you. Where in your own life have you seen someone quietly make room for another person, not with money, not with a grand gesture, but with a chair, a plate, a small space at the table? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may be exactly what someone else needs to read today. We read every single comment, and we treasure the way this community continues to remind us that gentleness still lives in the world. If you believe that stories like this one still have a place in our noisy days, stories about ordinary decency, about dignity, about the difference between helping and truly seeing someone, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Give this video a like if it moved you, and share it with someone in your life who you think needs to hear it tonight. Every subscribe, every like, every share helps us continue to bring stories like this to your screen. We also want to wish each and every one of you watching a life full of good health, easy laughter, and quiet peace. May your mornings be gentle. May the people at your table love you well. May there always be a seat waiting for you somewhere in the world, because somewhere out there tonight, someone is quietly deciding whether they belong. And sometimes all it takes is one person willing to say there is room here. Please, sit down. Goodbye for now, dear friends. Take care of yourselves and take care of one another. We will see you again very soon in the next story.